My name's Anthony Allen, welcome to my YouTube channel. This is part 6 of a 10-part series that I'm running for Final Cut Pro 10 beginners, and lesson 6 is coming up right after this intro. My name's Anthony Allen and you're back with lesson 6 of this 10-part series tutorial for Final Cut Pro 10. In this lesson, we're going to have a look at transitions. If you've missed any of the previous lessons and you're getting confused at this point, definitely go back and watch those previous lessons, as there's some really useful information that will help you with Final Cut Pro 10. So, transitions. They are something that changes the look and feel of one clip or piece of media from one point A to point B. Let's say, for example, this clip is point A. The next clip along in the timeline will be point B. How it gets there can differ, and that is what a transition is within Final Cut Pro. In order to open up the transitions window, if it is not open, you need to move to the far right of your timeline. You will see two icons. The transitions is this infinity looking icon here. Looks slightly like an hourglass on its side. I want you to click this. This has successfully opened up the transitions. Now at this point I want you to go to all transitions. This is opening up every single one of the transitions that you have installed within Final Cut Pro 10. It's very useful to go to the All category if you cannot find what you're looking for within the Transitions pane. Let me explain why. If you're looking for for example, cross dissolve, which is the first and most used transition within Final Cut Pro, and you can see it previewing on screen now. But let's say you're within the wrong folder. Let's say you're in blurs. One, you will not see this transition, and two, you will not be able to search for this transition within that specific folder. So if you have multiple folders, you won't be able to find what you're looking for if you're searching in the wrong folder. When you have all selected within your transitions, you can search for whatever you need. For example, let me select the search menu. Now I'm going to type cross dissolve, or begin to type cross dissolve. You can see that cross dissolve has populated itself within the transitions pane. In order to use this transition, I can now drag and drop this into the timeline. But first, let's have a look at what this transition looks like. Final Cut Pro has a default point A, which are these trees, and a point B, which are the mountains. In order to sample what this looks like, just like we sampled pieces of media before importing to our timeline, you click it, and with the playhead in the right place, press spacebar. This is sampling what the transition looks like. Press spacebar to stop this sample. If you would like to use the transition, you would then select, click and hold, and just like dragging into our timeline before, you would drag this transition to where you would like. You can already see that it is suggesting where you can drop this transition if you let go. If I was to let go of this transition now, it would populate the end of that clip there. We want it in between the first clip and the second clip within the timeline. Let's go and move that in between the first and the second clip within the timeline and see what happens. I'm going to go directly in between the two clips and I'm going to let go. You can see there is a problem with making this transition between those two pieces of media. It is saying to us that you will have to overlap two pieces of media in order to create the transition. This will decrease the total duration of your project. This means that point A and point B will overlap in order to crossfade from one to another. This will make point A and point B smaller in length to create the transition which is in between point A and point B. Let's do this now so you can see this in action. You can see there was a slight movement between each and every piece of media within the timeline because the overall length of the project became smaller. You can also see that this also needs rendering within the timeline. So if you don't have your rendering set to manual, this will automatically begin to render within your timeline, meaning that there will be a bigger file created as a result in order to showcase that rendered change. And every change you make within your timeline will need to be rendered, especially when working with transitions. Let's preview what this looks like. I like the look and feel of that, but we can actually make this transition slightly longer. In some cases, it is not applicable because the two pieces of media will be too small in order to do so. But if you double click on your transition, you will have the properties appear within the inspector. Here is where you can actually change the ease amount, the fade type, the in or out, and how it looks when it's transitioning. For example, this is going to transition the video itself, but you could also transition via just the highlights. Let's have a look how this looks now. Notice how the media struggle to play. We are not using proxy or optimized media, meaning this will need to be rendered. I will do this quickly and we'll explain rendering in another video later on within this playlist. That is now rendered. Let's have a look and see what this looks like. You can see that when it's transitioning with the highlights alone, that this is leaving the brightest source from the first clip A still alive until the last moment of the transition. Let's have a look. Notice how there were the brightest parts of the waterfall left on screen until the last minute? That is what this change to this transition does, as we are transitioning and looking at the highlights. If we make it sharp, dull, warm, cold, dark, this will also change the look and feel of that transition. But of course we are making a change, so this will need to be rendered again. There are many different attributes to a transition. You don't have to just use the same narrative for a transition like a cross dissolve, as there are different things that you can apply within the inspector, making the transition feel completely different. Now let me show you how to delete a transition. If we select here the transition and press backspace, you will notice that the transition is now deleted. But also notice how the video length did not return. This can happen within Final Cut. In order to undo an action, press Command and Z. We're going to press this a few times until we get back to what we had beforehand, before we even added the transition. Notice how the video length returned. Keep this in mind when you're using transitions within Final Cut Pro. There are many different transitions that you can use within Final Cut Pro, so don't be afraid to experiment so you get the look and feel that you want. This has been a tutorial from Anthony Allen. Thank you for watching. Give me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed, and definitely stick around to learn more about Final Cut Pro. And I'll see you in the next video here on the channel.